The United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mr. Donahue?
Here. Dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, overtime review for all departments as provided by City Controller dated May 26, 2022 for the period January through May 2022.
Are there any comments on any third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time? I just have one. I would just like to wish my wife a happy anniversary. I'm sure she loves the fact that I'm here tonight, but here we are. Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
First on the list is Joan Hodawanitz.
Joan Hodawanitz, city resident. It's May 31st, day 151 of the calendar year. 41% of the year is gone. Do we have any status on the negotiations for the union contracts?
It's my understanding they're still ongoing.
Okay. I came in this morning at 10 o'clock for the opening of the bid on the RFQ for a special labor council. Surprise, surprise, there was only one bid made, and that was by Ufberg and Associates. So we'll see if legislation is forthcoming. Here's what's surprising. Ufberg's contract ran out on March 31st, so they're operating under an extension. The RFQ was not published in the paper until May 12th. And I don't understand why we wait until contracts expire to publish an RFQ. It makes no sense. And we're also in the middle of labor negotiations. It's just not the way to run a railroad. Just in case, before I forget, the clerical union contract still has not been posted to the city's website. And also, May 31st, if we were operating by the Home Rule Charter, today would be the day that the 2021 audit would be due. Figure the odds. Okay, item 5H, raising Eileen Cipriani's compensation by $35,000 to $100,000. That caught my eye. And I wanted to see what her current compensation was. When the 2022 budget was first proposed, she was making, in 2021, $56,000, and it was proposed to go up to $80,000. Well, that didn't happen. It settled down to $65,000. Now, I understand that this compensation increase is not coming out of city funds. It's coming out of ARPA. And it's going to be $35,000 increase for the next 5 years. So I have no issue there, but I looked at the legislative backup, and there are a couple interesting things which they published. One was that designating an ARPA director, they're going to dual hat her as OECD executive director and the ARPA director. Designating an ARPA director at the city is necessary to direct the work of all such contractors, as the contractors working on ARPA, and to ensure the city does not lean too heavily on contractors. That's a statement in itself. And then it says, further down, Eileen Cipriani has already demonstrated a willingness to work well beyond the required 40 hours per week for the city. We have the utmost confidence that under this new arrangement, she will put in the extra hours needed to expertly perform the functions of both ARPA director and community development director. Now, this $35,000 increase, that's a 54% increase over $65,000. If a 40-hour work week were increased 54%, she would be working 61.6 hours per week for 5 years. Let's assume, as they say, that she works well beyond the 40 hours. Let's say she works 50 hours a week. 54% increase would have her working 77 hours a week for 5 years. Now, I'm sorry, but she's going to need to delegate some of her functions to her subordinates, and they're going to have to pick up the slack. She can't be working that many hours. But it's almost like, I'm sorry, but it's looking like she didn't get her $80,000, so let's do this instead. And that makes me feel very uncomfortable getting around the budget that way, if that's in fact is what is happening. I'll be interested to hear your comments in fifth order. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Norma Jeffries.
Good evening, Council. Norma Jeffries, Scranton resident. And I think I want to start off with what an appropriate conversation to have with the pool with it be 100 degrees outside. It was just very appropriate tonight that there was so much discussion about the pools. And I brought the paper. I have to give the Enquirer kudos for the wonderful information that they put in the Sunday's paper. I mean, it just went on and on and on about the various things, the conditions of the pools, the money that's going to be spent. So I brought the paper thinking that we were going to talk about that tonight, but a lot of more information was shared. I'm just sorry that I couldn't have a copy of what was shared and all, but I wasn't sure if it was on the city website that I could have printed it off, but I didn't see anything. And I know the mayor apologized for not having the slides, but sitting there and just hearing you talk about it, I would have liked to have had a copy and to see exactly what and where you were with the discussion. One of the things that I did think about as you were going through the discussion was the maintenance of the pool, and my neighbor Barb showed me that one of the sheets that was distributed tonight does show the maintenance costs that will be associated with the pool. A lot of talk about the splash pools. Now, as a senior citizen, I cannot see myself going into a splash pool. I cannot see myself just in 3 feet of water. So I have to hope that they're going to go and really take all the suggestions and make it sort of inclined so it does go to the 8 feet or 7 feet of water, you know, for the 3. The 3 feet is fine, but not for the whole entire pool. So I hope that that's something that will be taken into consideration so that we, you know, you talk about the young ones, the teenagers, but also for us senior citizens, we want something as well to cool off. The last thing that I went to at the park before they closed the pool, they had senior night. And it was unfortunate, it wasn't well attended as I would have liked, but it was a great night. And we were able to have the pool all to ourselves. But that night, I remember feeling that the lining in the pool, you know, it was throwing you off balance because it was just all bubbly, bubbly with the water underneath it. So, you know, we do like to know that there will be something there for us as well, and not a splash pool. This other thing that I wanted to talk about tonight was I had talked a little bit with Jessica. We went back and forth with information. I saw on our city website that there's an events tab that you can go in and put events on the city website. So I went in and I tapped, I clicked on the events, and a form comes up, but I couldn't go any further. So I was just wondering, like, how do I get an event on the city website? What we're working on right now is the Electric City Flower Show, which is going to be August the 6th. And I want to start getting the publication, getting in as much advertising for this event. It's something that's new for the city, and that it will be their first time doing it. But I would sure like to have it on the city website. And I think I sent Jessica the flyer that we're going to be, that we have developed, and I will be printing it off and giving it to you. But I think council is on vacation in August, is it? Yeah, so I'll have all of July to talk about the Electric City Flower Show. And my one final thing in my 1 minute left, I have to think about Ron Ellman. And, a couple of nights I wasn't here, I had conflicts. But my heart goes out to him. He comes here along with all of us, and he has such a heart for his neighborhood and the things that he goes through as far as living there, as a senior citizen, and have to put up with the things that he has to put up with. So I say kudos to him that he continues to come here to City Council, and I know that you said you were going to look into some of his issues. So I just hope that that's true, and you'll go through and help him in his neighborhood. I'm not sure exactly what part of Main Avenue he's on, but he always has such a heart for where he lives. And I remember something sticking out in my mind is that he said his boys don't want the house. And I thought, wow, it's probably the house that they grew up in, and they don't want any parts of it because of the neighborhood. So help him out, okay? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next on the list, Doris Koloski.
I just wanted to talk about the pool a minute. I do agree with Bill saying that the pool needs to be bigger.
Could you come? The TV can't get you if you don't come up to the.
No, we're good. I'm sorry. I do agree the pool needs to be bigger where people can jump in the side. I didn't hear everything because with the back to us, I couldn't understand some of it. So if I ask you a question that's totally out of it, that's why. I was wondering first about the bathhouse. Was that a requirement for the grants? Because I don't think we've had one for quite a while. Now, I could be wrong on that. But most of the people are in the neighborhood, they just stick their bathing suits, their clothes on over the bathing suit and leave. And the ones in the neighborhood just walk home in their bathing suits. So if that's not a requirement, it's kind of a waste of money, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other thing I was kind of confused about, and it might have been what you talked about, is I thought that where the large pool that used to have the diving boards that they took down years ago, I thought that was going to be the splash pad, and the size of the middle pool was going to be the new pool, the one where the slide was, and that there was kind of going to be like at the other end where they had the pump house and all that, and that's where the stuff would be stored in the pump house with the equipment. So I didn't hear any of that plan, option A, option B, because I was just coming in. And so was that what that was, size-wise, or?
Yeah, we could get you a copy of what was given to us tonight, before you leave. But yes, the splash pad was going to go where the lap pool was, and then the new pool would go where the current pool is where the old pool with the water slide was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yes, and then it's all just a matter of square footage, and then also, like we brought up tonight, a depth.
Okay, well, I'm glad a pool is still.
But the question I asked about the bathhouse was, you know, as the pools got bigger, so did the bathhouse. I didn't know if that was a requirement of, you know, a grant or whatnot, so we're
Well,
hoping to
that's
get
the
some.
only thing I was wondering, because many years ago, there was a bathhouse. We had little showers outside that you pulled the string, and then you went in the bathhouse, and the CETA children who didn't qualify for lifeguard, they worked it. But if you have a bathhouse and you don't really need it, and we don't have to waste money on it, I mean, you're not only talking about the bathhouse as a changing room, but if you ever walk in them, if you don't have somebody there cleaning up, I mean, there's usually paper and mess and
Yes.
everything all over, and that would be a whole other area, unless you're reintroducing the CETA program.
If you
Okay,
recall,
that's all I have to say. I'm keeping it short and sweet.
Thank you, Doris.
if you recall, though, that bathhouse was much bigger initially, like back when I was a kid, back in the 80s or 70s. And then when they redid the pool, it got much smaller. So now it seems like maybe that could be an area where it doesn't have to be as large as what was discussed.
Next on the list is Les Spindler.
Good evening, Council. Les Spindler, city resident, homeowner, taxpayer. First off, I wasn't here last week. My thoughts and prayers go out to the families in Texas that lost children in that senseless killing. It just breaks my heart. I mean, I have a 14-month-old granddaughter, and I pray every day that nothing happens to her. She's not in school yet, but something's got to be done. And maybe this isn't the forum, but I have to say this. The only way this is going to get done is vote every Republican out on Election Day. They're the ones holding up gun control, and their excuse is it's mental health. Well, if it's mental health, don't make AR-15s and AK-47s available for them to buy. We have to do away with those weapons. It was on the news last week, the national news. I didn't hear the countries, but a number of years ago there were 2 killings like that in the 2 countries. They passed gun control and they haven't had a killing since. We need gun control, and the only way we're going to do it is put all Democrats in there. And they just care about themselves, their self-interest, and the NRA. A couple days after, that idiot Donald Trump, these kids just got killed, and he's speaking at the NRA convention. It shows where his interest is. So anyway, this isn't the forum, but like I said, on Election Day, vote all these Republicans out of office before it happens in our city. These military-style weapons should not be in the hands of anybody. They're for military, not the normal person on the street. If we do away with them, we'll do away with these killings. We're the only country in the world, they said on the news last week, that this is happening in. There's no other country in the world dealing with these shootings. What does that tell you? Got to put politics aside and get this country safe. All right, that's my rant on that. Last fall, I brought up about the supervisor from DPW coming to paint lines on the corner. He said they'd be back before the cold weather. Well, they didn't come back. And now it's summer, and so far the corner hasn't been fixed yet. So I hope they're listening, because I know Tom Preamble told me he always watches these meetings, so I hope they're watching, because it's got to be done. Second thing, last Sunday's paper, I saw the story about all the parks. I didn't realize we had so many parks in this city. I had a couple of questions about Trip Park. The one thing they want to do is install a speed table on Dorothy Street for traffic calming. Does anybody know what a speed table is?
I don't, but I'll find out.
I know there's speed bumps. I've never heard of a speed table, so I don't know how that can slow the traffic down.
I think it's probably going to be the crosswalk that's a little wider.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if a speed bump is probably about a foot wide. This is going to be probably a 4 or 5 foot wide.
Oh, okay. Would
Speed
be a good
table.
idea. And another thing, they're considering making Dorothy Street one-way. I think that would be a good idea, because they talked about that when they were putting up the Isaac Tripp School. The buses were supposed to come up Dorothy Street and then down Bulwer Street, but that never came about. But I think making Dorothy Street one way would be a good idea, especially when they're playing ball down there. It's so congested, and so a one-way street would make it a lot less congested. Lastly, I was listening about the pools, and did I hear correct that they're going to put synthetic turf in between the splash pad and the pool?
Yes.
I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know if any of you watch baseball games on TV, but synthetic turf gets very, very hot in the summer. I was watching the game last week where they said, the one years ago in Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, they said the synthetic turf was 148 degrees on the turf. So what if kids want to go lay on that? They're going to get burned. They're just walking on it. Just put regular grass in. It's a lot cooler, and it's probably less money. Oh yeah, synthetic turf is a really bad idea. That's my opinion, but it's a fact. It's a lot hotter. The baseball players used to complain their feet would be burning right through their cleats standing on that turf. Anyway, that's my opinion. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Ron Ellman.
Good evening, Council. I hope I didn't bother nobody sitting back there eating my Rolos. I love Rolos. Just as I was coming in here, a lady walking down the alley with some books asked me why I'm wearing sunglasses all the time. It's because I squint so bad. I don't like light. I guess I ruined my eyes wearing sunglasses, so I wouldn't advise it. I like dark. I probably do my best work in dark, but I don't know. Anyway, if that makes anybody feel better. There's probably some of you notice over the years, I'm not an overly religious person. The last time I was in church was the afternoon of 9/11. I went to church in Hanover. I felt so bad that day. And lately, there's so many adversities, this Putin and just so many tragedies, and I have to agree with Les about these big guns. I wouldn't take guns away from people, but they're not necessary to me. I was in the service, and we didn't, in the Air Force, we didn't have any guns, but on the planes, they had 50 caliber guns, which would destroy something. My son years ago had an Israeli-made machine gun. The shells cost about 60 cents a piece then, and I wanted to shoot it, and I did like that, and I guess like 20 shells come out. They're just not necessary. I don't remember what he did with it. He probably traded it for some dope or something then, you know, I don't know. This week I listened to these armchair generals at the Tourist Club. Their solutions to everything. I don't know where they get the information. They were talking about in Arizona and Texas, warehouses full of baby food that only can go to the illegals' babies. Several of them saw it someplace, I didn't. But after I left church, I was still full of hate for everything. I hate hate mongers. I hate Putin. I do 24/7. The paper's full of hate. Letters to the editor from Sandra Myers and all her admirers. They hate Trump and the Republicans. It just doesn't stop the access to it. Kelly writes hate. He doesn't give up sometimes on his subject matter. I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad I got up and went to church, and I'm going to start doing it more often. Maybe I get rid of some of this. I'll tell you one thing. Since I dropped the cable a couple of weeks ago, I've read some books, magazines, and I really feel a lot better. I'm saving $2,000 a year. And after a few days of missing all my regular programs, I'm not a big television watcher anyway, so I didn't miss it. I wish more people would. I got a letter today from Dish asking me to come back, which surprised me. More people need to drop them and view the world. And while I think of it, I was glad to see Sister Paige here tonight. I wish she'd put more emphasis on the parks and all. Like I love the parks in the city. Can I say something real quick about the parks?
Real quick. Your time's up.
For years, I've been bringing apples to the deer off of Parker Street. So last week I had 2 little bags of apples. I don't know if they cost $5 or $6 or something. I walked way out in the woods with Chumley, my little puppy, threw the apples on the ground, and where nobody goes, here's a couple followed me out there. So I turned around and said hi, and I'm walking, and Chumley wouldn't walk. So I turned around to see why. This man picked up one of my apples I threw for the deer. So we had some words. I just had a fit about that. You know, how could you be so cheap to pick up apples for the deer, you know? Anyway, he's wearing his blue T-shirt. He comes, so I picked up my cane from the bottom. I was going to smack him. So one of us go to jail, the other one go to the hospital. But his girlfriend called him off of me. So I guess we could call it even.
A draw?
Yeah, thank you. Here.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman. Next on the list is Dave Dobson.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident. On the polls, the answer years ago that I heard on a bathhouse is you have to have a certain size bathhouse to accommodate the size of the pool. So that may be an utter imperative. The bathhouse that was torn down, as far as I remember, wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't the worst. And when I was up there with Kids Swim Free with the Taxpayers Association, I started going to a different bathroom because people were dressing in there, and it was just so tight that it was ridiculous. And that activist portrayed it as a pork barrel situation, so I don't know the full law, but that's something to look into. They may be just telling you the truth that we need a bathhouse. And I also favor pools more so than splash pads. That's okay for the kids, but I don't even swim myself. But the people that want to, I don't see anything wrong with spending some money on a pool if we have it. On COVID, I'm already on my 4th vaccination, and I have friends that just can't see the light. He was called a murderer by a couple that worked at a hospital. Well, you know, I tried to explain to him that, look, these people are working 12 and 16-hour shifts trying to keep people alive, and a lot of people don't see the point in vaccinations or masks or anything else. And it's really a shame. It's really a shame. Get out and get vaccinated. It's only a little pinch, and the first 1 or 2 times you might feel a little uncomfortable, but if you can, there's no medical reason you can't do it. And once again, I'd like to mention that it is time for Pennsylvania, the state, to kick in on all these properties going off the rolls. It's going to be a must. Can't just keep paying for the whole county or the whole area to have institutions, government institutions, and what have you, all kinds of tax-exempt institutions to just move in and take more and more land up. And as far as my Democrat friends, the only thing that was important to me after January 1st of 2021 was voting, and that was it. The aid packages were fine and dandy, but we have to make sure that voting is fair, easy, and possible. We don't need elections where people are standing in line for 12 hours, and it has happened in many states, and it may happen here with the person that's going for governor. I mean, really, forget about him. Okay. Oh, I just wanted to mention, a few weeks ago I said about people at the border. Well, the reason those people are at the border is because we did not get a global initiative on family planning, and that's all there is to it. These populations in South America, Africa, South Asia have doubled and tripled over 50 years. We've had enough time, and they're standing at the border now. The chickens are home to roost, so don't blame the next guy. Don't blame the next guy, because it's your fault for being anti-family planning. And there's a quickly, Teddy Roosevelt is on 5-hour documentary tonight. We're missing the first half, but I've seen it already, and I might be ducking out. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. That exhausts our sign-in sheet for this evening. Would anyone else like to address council?
Tom Coyne, Manuka. First of all, from the caucus, I don't know why after 6, 7, 8 months that this, actually since the last president was on council, basic pool questions are not even answered. I mean, first thing you do is, how big do we want this pool? It's not a big concept to go, you know what, I'd like to get into it and be able to swim or be up to my neck. We are now 7, 8, 9 months into it, and we're finally figuring out that a 3-foot pool just is not what we want. I think it was kicked down the road for too long, and things were too unclear, because it should not have taken this long to get an idea of where the pool should be. I like the idea of, at the splash pad, having the beach-type showers where They're in little boxes. You press on the button and the shower comes down. That would lessen the foot pad on the inside of it while still allowing shower facilities on the outside. For someone who doesn't want to go in there, who just wants to take a quick rinse off and be done with it. For caucuses, it's for public that these caucuses are out here. They're under the Sunshine Act because they're in a method for making decisions for the government. We need to have that documentation per the Sunshine Act uploaded 24 hours before these meetings so the people who come to these meetings have the documentation and can review it, because this is for the public's information as well. And without those being put up 24 hours beforehand for these caucuses, it leaves the public completely void of anything, especially with the sound system as known in here is substandard, and for people who are hearing impaired have trouble actually hearing what's going on. And I did check, and none of those documents are online. Pump houses need to be separate. Obviously, they need to be separate because there's high-pressure water going in there, and they're chemicals. You don't want to store your chemicals in the same building as you have showers or any other facility. So they do have to be in a separate contained building just because they are dangerous chemicals that are regulated. Now for the Recovery Act funds. I don't know if any of you looked at Wilkes-Barre, but they're having a problem now because Wilkes-Barre allocated funds, the city council, and gave the mayor's office permission to use them, and they expected that the mayor would return back to city council when she was getting ready to distribute those, or he. I don't know if it's a he or she, the mayor is. But the problem is they wound up spending them, and now city council is completely devoid of input because they gave carte blanche to it by saying the mayor can choose what to do with that money without coming back. And I think a lot of the stuff in this documents now that have been passed have put the mayor as discretionary and have not put a review process in place. 3A, what I see in the document is the overtime for the LIPS has already exhausted its funds for the year. 5F, about scalers. I see nothing that we are doing as a cooperative agreement. I see nothing that says that as part of the cooperating agreement that the city is reimbursed for anything. So we're offering a service through a cooperative agreement, and I don't see any mechanism there where the city is getting paid or reimbursed for that workload. 5H, we see a new director to help the OECD director. I see prior we had 4 positions planned, and now we changed that. From fall of 2021, it included 4 full-time positions. Now it's reduced to 2 full-time positions. I guess 2 cut positions pays for this director. That being said, they also are listed as 1099 contractors. How is the money from contractors going to come back to the city? How does it pay the residents? How does it keep people in this city employed? When we keep taking money that's meant for this city and sending it to contractors outside of the city and taking 4 jobs and reducing them to 2 to save money and to push it elsewhere, we rob our own community of jobs that should be here from funds that were meant to help this community. I just don't see putting a director in place is reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Would anyone else like to address council this evening? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. King, do you have any motions or comments this evening?
Just a couple of comments. I'd like to thank, I guess it was Bob Gattens and his group of volunteers that were involved with those hometown hero flags that went up in South Scranton and East Mountain, and all throughout the neighborhoods throughout the city, you know, honoring our veterans, and I thought that it really kind of it was great to be able to honor those who fought for us and for our freedoms. And my uncle and my father were two of them. And I just think it was so nice. And it really looks great in the neighborhoods and on the city streets. So I just want to applaud all of them, everyone who was involved in that project. I thought it was excellent. Once again, I do want to commend the DPW for all the work that's being done with the paving projects around the city and filling potholes as requests are submitted. They're doing an excellent job, and I see that Cherry Street has been completed. East Elm Street is just about done up on East Mountain, Roland Avenue, and they started milling around Mountain Lake, which was really, really bad. So they're doing a great job and taking care of the infrastructure underneath with the water issues prior to doing the paving. So I appreciate that. And to kind of echo Mr. Coyne's comments, I've been on council now for 5 months. That was the first I've seen that proposal this evening. So I was, didn't even have a minute to contemplate it until I was sitting here. So that's why I was kind of surprised that there was like a 3-foot pool on there. So I was glad I had the opportunity to add some input. And, once again, it sounds like a number of my colleagues here on council would like to see, and from what I heard from some of the public, that we'd like to have a swimming pool up there, and that's important. And not only, as Norma Jeffers pointed out, for the teenagers and the young kids, but also for adults and senior citizens to have the opportunity to go out and fully enjoy our park, just as we had years ago. If we're going to make that kind of investment, I think, into our city, into our parks, let's make sure that we do it right. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schuster, do you have any motions or comments?
Yeah, a couple. So just to piggyback off Mr. King's statements, if we are going to make the investment on the facilities up at NAOG, I do think that all ages should be able to partake in the facilities that are there. So, I mean, I'm in favor of getting in a traditional style pool there, so all ages can use it. So it's been some time since we got that. It was good to hear what the updates have been. We did have a presentation in the past about the pool, which has seemed to change from the first presentation to the second presentation. So I'd like to see what the input that was put in tonight and what comes back to us in the next week or so. There were a couple, Mr. Voldenberg, there were a couple emails that came in, and I'm sure other councilmen forwarded these along. 632, 634 Harrison Ave, we had complaints about grass and cats. I think you were also included on that email. We had an email sent over about the Theodore Street Bridge. And I got another address today on the way over here. It was the corner of Wyoming Avenue and Greenridge Street, across from the church there. The grass is really tall, and if we could send that over to code enforcement for them to take a look at. Other than that, Solicitor Gallagher, did Mr. Cotillo reach out and give us a response after your May 24th email on labor billing?
I asked him to contact me concerning any redactions, but he did not contact me, and I didn't get a chance. I saw him here earlier, but I didn't get a chance to speak with him. So I'll reach out to him tomorrow again, see where we're going with that.
Okay, so we haven't heard back since May 24th about the billing?
I don't believe so.
Okay, no. Thank you. That's all.
Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, just real quick on Harrison, I had received that complaint as well in the 600 block, and there have been several complaints that I've been receiving regarding multiple issues along Harrison Avenue for years now, and I try my best to stay up on the complaints and the properties as much as I can, because it's my neighborhood. I feel like I have an added responsibility towards it, and with the committee for community development that I'm chair of. But it is frustrating that a lot of changes have not been made, and I would like to make a request to have another walkthrough of Harrison Avenue with the new inspector that covers that area, because I know there was someone who was recently hired, and I just wanted to make them aware of it. And there's honestly just too many to send along, because it's something every single block, going from at least like the 300 block of Harrison all the way up to the 700 block, and it's a main thoroughway through the city. So it's important to me that that I do that again with whoever's the new inspector, and they could put out door tags for whatever hasn't already been addressed. I know many of them are put into the system, but nothing's being done about them.
I'll reach out in the morning, Dr. Rothchild.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then just to note from our conversations earlier from the caucus, I was happy to see that the options that were included do have a pool, because I know from earlier options we had received that there was at least one option that was just a splash pad, and I know none of us were in favor of that. But I don't feel that like a 3-foot pool would be sufficient enough. I would certainly want to see something at least 8 feet, but we could certainly debate on the size. Ultimately, I do understand it needs to fit into a budget, and we don't have all the money that we would like to spend towards this. But I want to make sure that it's worth our while for the city and for the people who will be utilizing the park and the pool complex. I would like to see some more details on what would be included. It's been a while since the study, and I'm not sure if everything in these options were taken from the original study. But for example, what would be in the bathhouse that's proposed as of now? Because my question during the caucus, for those who couldn't hear, was is a bathhouse something that's a priority to be completed as of right now? The mayor responded that it is in fact a priority, and the current structure is not going to be usable with once a splash pad and a new pool is in place, and because there are other options that additional add-ons they included a list of for us that could be funded later on, which included ideas like a volleyball court, basketball court, tennis courts, pickleball, and a wellness loop, which I think are all great ideas and understandably might not need to come first. At least we want to get this going with the water features and the splash pad and a pool. That's all that I have to add on that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments?
Yeah, I have some comments. So I'll start with the pool. So I'm a type of guy that's... I apologize. So I'm the type of guy that looks at let's need to have versus nice to have, right? I think we've already decided that we need a pool, right? We've been talking about this for the 3 years I'm on council, and I never heard it was going to be 3 feet deep, which I feel is ridiculous. So we need a pool. Is it nice to have some volleyball courts? Is it nice to have some artificial turf? Is it nice to have splash pads? Well, we have a splash pad. We got one last year. And from what I'm reading in the paper, McDade Park is going to become a splash pad. So which is very accessible to everybody in the city. So, I mean, let's cut back on the nice to haves, and let's focus on the need to have, which is a pool that will serve everybody and every generation. Can't just be 3 feet. So, and also about funding. I know the mayor mentioned a couple times us, how are we going to fund it? What are our ideas to fund it? Maybe I'm incorrect, but our role is to approve the funding. It's the administration's job to find the funding, and the OECD director. So, with that said, as you know, I'll entertain any ideas how to fund it. I threw my own out there or pitched one, but we talked about this for 3 years. I expected more work to be done. I expected more answers. So I'm looking forward that this looks like we're moving forward. But there are my thoughts on Fifth Order. I'm sorry, on the pool. Secondly, so last week I brought up a concerned residents came to me, and I'll wait for that to pass. So about the West Scranton Skate Park as it relates to upkeep and regular maintenance of the park, because I got a bunch of complaints that it was in disrepair, and it was in pretty bad shape. So I asked, where are we at with that, and the status of regarding the next steps planned to improving the park outside of just regular maintenance. So I'm happy to report that I received. And I want to thank Mr. Voldenberg because he sent this inquiry for me, that the Jackson Street Park will receive weekly routine maintenance and upkeep since I've implemented a schedule and assigned parks to our team. I was there this week while my team performed duties, and I was able to get valuable feedback from few concerned residents that live next to the park. We are assessing the building on site and determining the direction of the park currently. I can attach the park's assessment guidance and suggested improvements. These aren't the extent of the plans of the park, but used as a resource when discussing long-term plans, direction, grant opportunities, etc. I will bring back feedback as I receive this week to our next discussion. So this is from our new Parks Director, Director of Parks and Recreation, Marissa Duffy. So I thank her for the immediate response, and I already know that some of the residents are thrilled because, I was able to message them back that we have something for you, and I'll report out tonight. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Just briefly, Mr. Voldenberg, do we get a response regarding my questions to the fire department on responding to calls outside city limits?
Not as of this afternoon, Mr.
Okay,
Donahue.
thank you. Second off, I know Mr. Schuster mentioned the 6th, and Dr. Rothchild mentioned Harrison Avenue. One of the things that was brought up in this email, which I've gotten a lot of complaints about across the city, is people feeding stray cats. I know they're probably thinking they're doing a good thing, but I think sometimes it creates more harm in a neighborhood than it does any benefit. So I really do think we need to look into putting some restrictions on the feeding of stray cats, especially in neighborhoods that are more close together. Also, I got a complaint about the area of Mineral Ave and Silex Street, which is down off Olive Street. So, Mr. Voldenberg, I'll give this to you, and if you'd be able to forward this complaint on to code enforcement for them to go and check it out. And that's all I have this evening.
5B for introduction, a resolution approving the intermunicipal transfer of a restaurant liquor license R11469, currently owned by Num Noggin LLC and located at 277 Drinker Turnpike, Covington Township, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania 18424, to Base Holdings LLC, located at 820 South Washington Avenue, Unit 4, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania 18505, as required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I was just wondering, because the name of who this is going to be transferred to, I'm wondering what type of business or what the restaurant name is that this is being transferred to. I wasn't able to find more of the details in the backup. Does anyone else have that information? If not, could we find out, Mr. Voldenberg?
I can find out, Dr. Rothchild.
Okay. Yeah, because it states the owner, but not what place it's actually
So I think that
being
might be
transferred to.
something in that new, the new building by the bowling lanes there. That would be the 820 range there, but we'll find out the exact
Yeah, I want to know
name.
what the business
Yeah,
is.
but just in terms of, the area where it is there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
I make a motion to table item 5B.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to table item 5B. This piece of legislation is being tabled to allow for advertisement of a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, June 14th at 5:45 p.m. On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Greenway, Trails, and Recreation Program for up to $250,000 to be used towards rehabilitating Robinson Park.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that items 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question?
On the question, Mr. Voldenberg, it's been some time since we got a grant update. So could we reach out and get an update as to what all the list of grants that have been applied for, what's been awarded, and what has been denied at this point?
I will, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, just, I think that's a good idea, because I think this one was one that was applied for last year, and it wasn't granted, so I think we're applying for it again, but it is a good idea to get an update on what we have applied for and where that stands. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Office of the Budget for the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program for up to $2 million to be used by Lackawanna College for the Center for Technology Innovation Project.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Pennsylvania Office of the Budget for the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program for up to $500,000 to be used by Admiral Management, LLC, for the 326 Adams Avenue project.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5F for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, Division of Weights and Measures, to delegate specific weights and measures inspection and enforcement responsibilities to the City of Scranton.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? All those in favor of introduction?
Wait, excuse me, on the
Okay.
question. I just wonder, like, so has there been a problem with this in the past? Like, what's the purpose for the city taking on this?
I think what the city's done it, I think the MOU that we currently have is just expiring at the end of June, so we just have to approve an additional
It's a
MOU for
continuation?
5 more years.
Okay.
I don't believe anything's changed, but we could take a look at that too. But I, based off the backup, it said it was just a renewal of the MOU that's already been in place.
Yes, I think it would be a good idea to ask if anything has changed from the MOUs that's expiring in 2022.
Mr. Voldenberg, would you be able to reach out and see if anything has changed with the MOU we have compared to the one we're currently operating under?
I will, sir.
Thank you.
And this one, it might not be totally fitting for this resolution, but when we're looking at the trucks that are moving off of Railroad Ave, 3rd Ave, in that section there, in the Bellevue section, can we look into whether anything could be put into this that would help us to regulate the traffic that's moving through that area any differently than we are now?
I'll check into it, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5G for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a memorandum of understanding between the Scranton Police Department and the Scranton School District regarding the policies and procedures for school resource officers.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? On the question, Mr. Voldenberg, could we do the same with this too, and check with the PD to see if there's anything either additional or being taken out of the current MOU we have with the school district regarding resource officers?
I'll take care of it, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5H for introduction, a resolution adding the responsibilities of American Rescue Plan Act Director to the Director of Community Development's portfolio and allocating ARPA administrative funds accordingly pursuant to the City of Scranton ARPA Spending Plan, Resolution 69 of 2022.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved?
Second.
On the question?
On the question, so I have a problem also, like some of the residents that spoke tonight. So first of all, for Mrs. Cipriani, and this is nothing personal, I voted no for her appointment because she didn't want to move into the city. I voted no for the waiver to allow her to work here and not live in the city. So also, I mean, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. How can I vote now to allow her to receive $100,000 and still not live here? All right. And in addition to that, so we have money for this ARPA director. I would like to hire a director over 5 years with a laser beam focus on dispersing these funds. All right. Not just another position combined, because let's not forget, Mrs. Cipriani she's the head of OECD, but she's also the head of the LIPS department / code enforcement office. All right, so she has a lot on her plate. And then another position, I think it might be too much, and it's nothing personal, too much for her to complete in a day with these three oversight positions. So I'll be voting no for all of them reasons combined.
Also on the question, I have some of the same concerns. Can we also, if this resolution gets introduced tonight, could we also reach out to the administration to see what hours Mrs. Cipriani will be allocating towards OECD, code enforcement, and the ARP director if she's in that position, so we can just get a beat on what she would do during the regular work week for each of these positions.
Just on that, I agree, but it is my understanding that there are timesheets that have to be kept in terms of how federal money is spent, so it's not, so it's used properly, especially when you're separating, the code enforcement part with the CDBG money that funds the majority of her salary now. So I think that the timesheets are a requirement that she has to keep, but we could look into seeing what that is.
Well, I mean, with that request, we could also do how much time does she dedicate to OECD versus LIPS code enforcement.
Anyone else on the question?
On the question, I'll be voting in favor of this. I do have concerns too. I did have a question about the amount of compensation, how that was determined based on how many hours of work. I would like a response to that. However, I believe that she's already been doing some of this work, and I think that people should be compensated properly for their work. I don't see it as a raise, but if she's doing this work in addition to her current job, then I understand there being additional compensation, and it would also save us on ARPA money that could be utilized for other things rather than an ARPA director's salary of $100,000 that was pointed out in the backup. But of course, we want to make sure that the amount of time needed for that position can be dedicated to it. with just it being added on to the responsibility she already has. So I'll be looking forward to some of those responses, but as of now, I'm in agreement.
Anyone else on the question?
I'll be voting yes on this for introduction with the hope that we're going to get some of these questions answered prior to ultimately seventh order.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it, and so moved.
5I for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Greenway, Trails, and Recreation Program for up to $250,000 to be used towards rehabilitating Capouse Park.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5I be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved?
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, filed at Council Number 13, 2022, closing certain portions of Center Street and Lee Court to vehicular traffic to develop a pedestrian living alley to support economic development downtown and encourage public health through pedestrian activity.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second?
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, Resolution Number 81, 2022, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a professional services contract with PFM Financial Advisors, LLC, to provide financial advisory services for the City of Scranton for the period of 4 years.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, so last week, I posed some questions that I needed to make an informed decision on final vote. I voted to introduce, but I asked 3 questions, and they were outside of the TAN. Will PFM assist in other current and future financial matters, and what are these advisory services? The second question was, did PFM's work end or pause following the TAN process and city exit from Act 47, and why the pause? And the third one, is a 4-year contract necessary with PFM? I also asked, in addition to that, would there be a cap? How much we're going to pay them, or is there a ceiling? So with that said, Mr. Voldenberg did a great job. He sent this correspondence, knowing that I wanted this information to make an informed decision on behalf of the residents for final passage. So what did we receive back today from the new Director of Finance?
Mr. McAndrew, we were advised that the information would be forthcoming. However, we did not receive as of the meeting.
Right, so the email stated I was going to get it today from the Finance Director. He was just waiting on Mr. West's approval to allow this information to get to me. So with that, like I said earlier, these are reasonable requests. These are reasonable questions. But without the answers, I can't make an informed decision on behalf of the taxpayers. So I'll be voting no.
Anyone else on the question?
Well, on the question, with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to table.
Second?
There's a motion on the floor to table item 7A. On the question?
On the question, I mean, I'm going to vote no to table because I should have had this information. This isn't the first time that I ask questions and have correspondence sent to the departments seeking information where I either get it, or I either never get it, or I get it weeks, or I get the wrong information, or half of it. So, unfortunately, I'll be voting no to table because I think I shouldn't have to wait this long.
Anyone else on the question?
Yeah, on the question, I just have, my question would be, is this a new service or an existing service? So if we could forward that request along to,
Okay.
along with Mr. McAndrew's questions.
I will, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Voldenberg.
On the question, I'm voting yes on the motion to table, just to allow for more time for a response, because I am interested in the responses to these questions prior to voting. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of tabling item 7A signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it, and 7A is tabled.
Eighth order, 8A, file of the council number 9, 2022.
This piece of legislation is the updated zoning ordinance. It is still currently tabled to allow for additional input, any changes and/or amendments. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.